Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to the show. I've got with me today Paul Ravenscroft. He's the head of CRM and loyalty analytics at Pets at Home, and we're talking about developing and retaining data analytics talent. I prefer to call them people. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thanks for coming along. So let's get straight in. It'd be great to hear a bit about you and your background.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm about to take up a role at Pets at Home, which by the time this goes out, we'll be in the middle of, and I'm really looking forward to that. Running an analytics team, developing customer experience and the customer platform, and that's going to be really, really good. But today I'm going to be talking about developing and retaining an analytical team. And for the past 12 years, I've been working at Boots, developing their CRM programs, developing the way they use the Advantage card data. And I've also built that team from scratch. So when I joined, there was no one there. By the time I left, there were 46 roles in place. And there's been many challenges around developing and retaining analysts during that time. And it's also been a time of constant growth and innovation. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is bringing out examples from my time.
Yeah, lots of change absolutely. That happened when you were there. You know, I think you were probably the Walgreens Alliance would have been set up while you were there, and lots of big major transformation. So really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Right from the start, we were on a transformation program, rebuilding the Advantage card capability, and then later on, the Walgreens capability came in. It started to run analytics for other elements of the WBA business. So it became quite a big team by the end of it. But the challenges were often consistent.
Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, well, great to hear from you today. And I look forward to hearing a bit more about Boots. I think it's a sort of, retail's always been the poster child of data, and some of that has come from the fact that these really sort of strong loyalty propositions that Boots have got, that Tesco sort of, arguably pioneered through their club card, and lots of retailers have followed, has certainly sort of helped put retail on that pedestal, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think working in retail, and I've always had a background in retail, done a bit of B2B, but again, it was working in a long tail environment, so to speak. And I think if you may have worked in different organizations that were very heavily data focused, but their product breadth was relatively narrow. Whereas in retail, you've got a very wide product breadth, and hence loads of data, not necessarily big gains from selling any one product, but it's building up that loyalty over time, so customers keep wanting to come back to you and open your emails or open your direct mail or go on your app, whatever it is. So it's always been great fun and a great challenge.
What were some of those challenges then, if we focus on this lens of developing and retaining talent? What are some of the challenges you had? I think you said you started with nobody and ended up with lots. So just talk us through sort of how that panned out for you.
Yeah, well, there were a few challenges, and I'll do this from the perspective of a leader and a line manager, and also from my perspective of someone based in Nottingham. So it may be different in other areas. I think there's a different experience in London and its own challenges. But in Nottingham, there's a few competitors around. Actually, our changeover of staff between those competitors for talent rather than competitors for business was actually quite small. But I think there are three key challenges. One is that growth starting from nothing is the obvious example, always creates demand. So I was always on a process of recruitment, even without a level of attrition. And then the second thing I would say is that, and this will be, something that anyone in a line management role will have come across. There's always circumstances. So, members of the team in the past have wanted to go down and do the London thing and try that market environment. So you lose people to that. Someone's partner might move roles. You lose people to that. People want to broaden their career. Great. And then sometimes also, you recruit people and for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. So you've always got that type of attrition, and it's a natural thing. And it can be a good thing. I think some attrition within a team is a good thing. And even when you lose good people, it creates an opportunity. It creates a gap for someone to step up, and it creates a opportunity to bring someone in who can bring in fresh ideas and new vigor to the team, and whatever it might be. But there's some negatives that you need to watch out for, in my opinion. So you want the right sort of attrition. If you're losing people because there's a big pay gap to the market and everyone knows it, and you've got recruitment consultants phoning up and this kind of thing, that's a bad thing. If you've got people saying, well, I'm going because there's no opportunity, that's no good.
So
people are frustrated.
It's the whole regretted loss, or it was right for everybody, or circumstance changed things, where that's the difference, isn't it? You want to minimize your regretted loss as far as you can, and do everything you can to make sure that people don't want to leave. They might have to leave for, as you say, certain circumstances, but they don't necessarily want to leave because there's opportunity. Absolutely. As a leader and having developed people, the most frustrating conversation is where I've got to go because I don't want to go, but I've got to go because I can't see a way forward, or I'm spending too much time battling with IT or doing admin or whatever. These challenges aren't going to go away entirely, but it's that threshold where it becomes more. And as a leader, I see it as part of your job to try and remove those barriers and reduce those negative sources of attrition as best you can. Yeah, we go back to so attrition, sort of like people on the way out, of course. If we go the other side, sort of getting people in the first place. So what kind of, where's that worked for you? Is there any I don't know, tactics or strategies that you've employed to sort of ensure you're attracting the right sort of people in the first place? Because obviously that massively impacts attrition, because if you don't attract the right people, you end up either needing to remove people, or people just move on because it's ended up being right for anybody.
And I think as I mentioned a few moments ago, sometimes you don't get it right, or a candidate comes in full of enthusiasm but finds out it's not the job that they really wanted to be doing, and that kind of happens. And there's a challenge to minimize that, but it will happen. And just from the practical side of things, recruitment is a time-consuming activity. I like recruiting, and I like meeting people and talking to them and finding out about them. But even from an interviewer's point of view, it can be exhausting, takes up time. There's always risks to it, and then beyond that, if you're bringing in more and more people, there's always the cost of training, whether that's a budgetary cost or the time used up to develop people. And often that's not taken into account when people think about, the costs of retaining people versus the cost of hiring people. So there's a few things within there. And we did talk about scarcity when we caught up before, whether there really is scarcity in the market.
Scarcity of people, or scarcity of the right skills, or scarcity of the right sort of mindset. Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I think when I originally spoke about it, it's scarcity of skills, and which then relates to people. But actually, I think I'd rephrase it. And it's improving all the time. So the skills around coding, around business practices, around analytical practices, around the ability to use data and understand what it means, and how you share that with business users, that's getting better. I think the challenge is now making that connection between the people who've got those skills, because we are starting to see analytics degrees and data science degrees and this kind of kind of thing, but you don't necessarily need one of those to do to be a good analyst. I come from a social science background, and a lot of the skills within social science are analytical skills. So the way I'd phrase it now, having thought about it a bit more, is not that it's a scarcity of skills. It is a gap between people who've got those skills and the sort of knowledge, yes, that will need development, and reaching out to them and saying, hey, these jobs are here and it's a really interesting career. I fell into it through being part of a big organization the first time around I was at Boots, and a lot of people still do. So I think we need to be more proactive about it. And one thing that sort of resonated with me is that I was talking to a colleague in IT, and they'd done a survey amongst graduates that were doing IT related courses. And what they found was that these graduates didn't even realize Boots had an IT department. And it's a huge IT department. So if there was that perception amongst IT graduates, this was a few years ago, so it may have changed. If there was that perception of IT graduates, something a little less established like data and analytics is going to have a bigger problem there.
Yeah. How do you start to solve
I'd summarize it as a gap that we've got to bridge.
Yeah. How do you sort of get around some of those perception challenges, understanding challenges, education challenges then? Because that's the starting point, isn't it? And people need to be aware that opportunity for roles exist, and indeed at the company that you're at, and to build the team, that's got to be a clear part of the strategy right here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were doing some really good work towards the end of my time at Boots. So I think that the big challenge is getting responses and going out through the normal ad route is probably not good enough to do that. I think you need to be more proactive about it. And
in what way? What way, Paul?
Well, so a couple of things that we were working on and had spent quite a bit of time doing was one example would be developing partnerships with universities. So where there is a faculty, and it may be an unrelated faculty, it may be a science faculty. Again, it's not a data and analytics degree, but there are skills within there, like social science and the humanities, and of course maths and computer science as well. So developing those partnerships with universities and saying, there are roles here, and these will use the skills that you're developing in a different way. And generally, we found universities were quite open to that, but it was a constant work in progress to get something out of it. Another good one. And when I land in my next role or future roles, I'm really going to push this, is the apprenticeship scheme, which I think is underused. If you're probably someone coming to the end of A levels or at that standard, the idea of going to work but also doing a degree at the same time seems really, really appealing, and it's a good way to bring people into the profession. So to speak. So there'd be a couple of examples, as well as just being more proactive as a recruiter.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about bringing in talent, you're focusing quite a lot on the new entrants into the market. You're talking about graduates, apprentices, people with less experience. Is that because that's how you've always tried to build your team? A sort of a future growing team, or is it actually really about a mix of those sort of new people into the market, and with some experienced hands, some more grey hair maybe, or is it that there is scarcity and that's why you have to go to universities? Where's that lens coming from for you?
Yeah, so this was probably the cause of my comment around scarcity. So in all, over the 12 years, I probably recruited around about 90 people into the team. It was pretty rare, probably about 10% of people who had previous experience. And actually, sometimes even then, it didn't work out because it was a different sort of experience, and they couldn't adjust. So this is one of the things that may well be different in London, but it was certainly the case for us in Nottingham. It was rare that we saw people with the sort of skills required. And of course, anyone working in data, particularly an older business, will know that you've still got to learn the tools, and particularly you've still got to learn the data as well. Yeah. So it was forced out of necessity in a way. So it wasn't just universities and those partnerships, both internally and externally. What I and my leadership team were looking for was evidence that people could develop those skills. So maybe that would come out of the academics, maybe it would come out of other things that we're doing, maybe it would come out of the interview process itself. It was a mix of all of those sorts of things. And what we needed to do was play to our strengths. So what were the big strengths at Boots? Well, fascinating program to work on, the Advantage card or Boots International or the opticians, a lot of data to work with that would excite some people. The brand in itself was a strength. And so, my aim was always to recruit a diverse team, which we were quite successful at doing. At times the mix was 70-30 female, which is still a rarity in analytical and data circles. And while we always did things like run adverts through a gender biased decoder to make sure it was being positioned in the right way, actually, the brand really helped with that. There was an attractiveness to that which helped build a diverse team. So building on those strengths, another one will be the environment. Fantastic office at Boots, and sometimes when people came in for interview, I would take them for a tour round it, so just to see what their reaction was and to show them what they were potentially coming into, and this type of thing.
It's interesting whether those will still be the draws, right? Because they're not necessarily limited by geography in your new role because of the situation we're in, or maybe we'll all be unlocked shortly. But even then, geography that barrier has sort of moved a little bit because I think people are more used to it. And also, so that's good from how far can you reach to find people? You're not limited to the square mile around the office, but also how do you replicate that, showing people around the office and demonstrating an exciting environment to be in when you don't necessarily have an office to show around, or one that they may not be in very often. Be interesting.
That will be a new challenge, and we've got to adjust for that. But that's all part of another strategy I employed in terms of attracting people was to open up requirements. I found if you went too hardcore down a data and analytics route, and you must do this, and you must be able to code in SAS or SQL or whatever it was, that severely limited your pool of people available. And bearing in mind, my team, which I don't think I mentioned it at the start, was primarily focused around loyalty and digital analytics. I was recruiting people from data scientists through to data planners, through to customer experience specialists. So there was a big mix in skills in that team. And what I was looking to do was bring in a good pool of people, not the fabled unicorn analysts, but the unicorn team, if you like. And through that, I recruited some really good people, because the other side of the criteria was their ability to work with the business. Whatever we were doing was in partnership with other parts of the business, and you need analysts who can do that. And to give you a couple of examples of the type of things that went on and who I recruited. So Emily would be one example, who was an Olympic coach. Her previous work had been on preparing athletes for the 2012 Olympics.
Right.
And she had an analytical background. They use a lot of analysis in coaching in athletics. And actually, she was really, really good. And I recruited her not only because I thought she would be a good analyst, but because she would actually be a great asset to the business.
Yeah.
And she did a few years, got promoted very quickly, and then moved on to a commercial role, and now is in a senior role. Another example would be Katie, who I recruited internally from HR, again using a bit of data, but not with really pre-existing skills, and she became one of my very senior managers as she developed within the team. So it's keeping an open mind and looking for people with some of those broad skills, not all of them, because you'll never find that person, but some of those broad skills that you think you're looking for and can develop in those
I think
people.
That's back to your point that this is a team sport, isn't it? And you need different skills, different mindsets, different backgrounds, different levels of maturity, different skill qualities and mindset. You need that. You need to create a cohesive team from it, but that it's not all about just bringing someone in that can code in. There's lots to it, and of course, the more diverse team you have, the more cross training within that team and cross developing within that team is possible.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure we're going to go and talk about development in a few moments. But one of the good things about bringing people in who aren't too set on a particular coding language or a tool or whatever it might be is that they're flexible. So pretty much everyone who came into the team learned SQL, and then later on that started to develop into R. And who knows what it might be next. Once people have been through that journey, they know they can do it again. I started in SPSS, and then I moved to SAS, and then moved to SQL. The important thing is to know what you actually want to do, and then you can learn how to say it in any particular coding language.
Where the buttons are, how to write that syntax, but problem solving and knowing the approach is way more important for sure. So on that, then you sort of pointed out the sort of development side, because obviously developing people helps with retention, keeping people. The combination of those two things, I think, sort of makes for a sort of positive growing team. Is there did you find anything particularly worked? As you say, you're bringing lots of people in that were fresh into this industry or into these roles. You're bringing people in that didn't necessarily have the underlying skills. So how did you sort of focus the attention on developing consistently? I suppose would have been important for you, and making sure that the sort of like movement of people, promotions and succession worked well.
Yeah, so I think developing and retaining all part of the same process, but the way I went about it was slightly different, although they're connected. So development, first of all, recruitment was always the biggest challenge. But then, having recruited, as you say, you need to go on and make sure you're making the most of these of the skills that people are bringing in. So, in terms of development, a few things worked very, very well for me, which I think are worth passing on. So, I found that a structured approach worked really well, and I picked up something that originated from a consultancy, and it was a skills matrix. So as you progress through the different levels within an organization, your skills would be expected to meet this level. But it also gave you visibility. That's what you should be aiming for. If you want to make it to the next grade, these are the types of things that we should be seeing from you. And I and members of the team worked that up into a structure and a tool. And what it did was give clear guidance to the managers and help with consistency there. But it also gave team members who were developing an idea of what they had to do and areas that they should aim for. And it was a great facilitator for a conversation between manager and direct report. They both fill it in. Where do we think they are? And generally what would happen is that, there might be a gap between them, but they tended to align. And then the conversation went into, right, you're really strong here. How can we turbocharge that? This is an area of weakness. How can we how can we develop that
Right.
more. Really good for facilitating a conversation, but also setting that longer term vision. Of course, from a line manager's point of view, it's not just a case of, oh yeah, I can do that now, I can do this now. It needs to be evidenced in behaviours and actions. But again, that was a big support to the line managers. The second thing that I think worked really well was a hands-on approach. So we did have some training programs and really good training programs. Some were internal, some we worked on with partners like Data IQ to bring in. But because a lot of people had come in who maybe had a few analytical skills, were bridging across, or no analytical skills, everyone had kind of been through that. We'd all at some point started thinking, well, what's all these databases and coding and all of this kind of thing. We'd all been through it. And I don't know whether the police do it anymore, but it used to be the case that everyone joining the police had 2 years on the beat. So they needed to learn the ropes before they then went on to either specialize or get promoted. And there was a touch of that to it. We'd all done the day-to-day technical work. We'd all been through it. And so where that helped is that you could have an open conversation with your line manager, or vice versa, knowing what each other was going through, or with a peer or a colleague. So
if nothing else helps empathize with each other, that what is involved with their side of the role. Did you do the same with? So you mentioned about sort of being hands-on with analytics. What I've seen work really well is being hands-on, and you mentioned it with the police there, being hands-on with the end customer. So did you spend time in stores or with the digital teams who are sort of interacting with the end customer as well to help sort of bring that to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably more customers in terms of internal customers.
So stakeholders,
yeah. So working very closely with those, because I'd always say, well, we can be as clever as we like with the data, but if the if the creative content doesn't match with it, then it doesn't work. You can have beautiful creative, but if you send it to the wrong people, that doesn't work either. So there was a lot of interaction, and certainly I recruited for people who I thought would work well with internal teams. And Boots were also very big on people getting out into store. Obviously, a lot of stores, and meeting the customer as well. So that was all part of developing as an analyst. And of course, because you're using the Advantage card, you're working with actual customer data, and sometimes it was really insightful to go and see how it actually worked in practice. So that was all part of it. And then sitting over it was a very experienced senior team who, as I say, had all been through it and knew the pitfalls and what happens, and all of this kind of thing to help guide the new team through it. And I think there's some really experienced people who are very good at doing that there.
Yeah, that's important. How did you or do you, or what your mechanism around avoiding sort of training up people? So particularly if you're bringing in some highly capable people and then train them in the thing that you needed or will need, how did you avoid that problem of sort of training and then people going, brilliant, I've earned my stripes, I'm going to go and do this elsewhere?
Yeah, well, that did happen, and at one stage, we did have quite a high attrition rate for that reason. So when it comes to retaining, I think that's a little bit more difficult, because developing, that's in your control for the most part, or you can do a lot more that's within your control. Sometimes retention factors are out of your control, and knowing the difference between what can be changed and what can't is an important first step. And it probably goes back to those danger signs that I was talking about earlier. If people are that far out against the market or don't see any opportunities, they're the things that you really want to address, but it takes a little bit of time to do that. So investing so much time in developing and kind of having that esprit de corps helps anyway, and having a team that people just enjoy working in is a big thing. I think there is a danger, or there can be a danger, in a world where there's a high demand on analytical skills. Is that you can jump down a route and make it all about pay. Now, there's dangers to that, because for some people it will never be enough. I think they're the minority. Actually, for most people, it's not just about pay. It's about the whole work experience. But there are things that you can do. It may take a little longer to change. The first thing I'd say is create a known value for your team. What is it that you deliver to the business? Where are you bringing value? And work really hard on making that as clear as possible. When you're in a world where there's multiple analytical teams and multiple partners working on things, sometimes that can be tricky to do. But work hard on that, and establishing a clear point of difference. Why is that team there? What are they doing? Where are they bringing value? And make that important in the way the team that presents itself. I did have a problem for a while with structures within the team relating to opportunity, and that was something that I addressed through restructuring. One of the big benefits of being in a position of almost perpetual growth and change was that created opportunities to say, well, okay, we're going to start developing this new project. Let's take a look at the structure around that. And over time, I built up more senior layers within the team. Not everyone who wants to be senior is going to get to that, but creating a few opportunities to do that is really important. And alongside that, because line management and that side of things isn't for everyone, valuing and recognizing technical skills. So the senior manager versus the senior analyst or senior data scientist or whatever it might be. Those two routes are important. And then the last thing I'd say, and it is something that's within all of our control, is about giving responsibility to analysts. I'm a big advocate of servant leadership, but in that process of developing people and giving them a sense of worth and helping them show that they're making a difference and they're creating value. Give people responsibility to do that. Focus your development plans and training plans. That matrix that I talked about earlier was primarily about soft skills, not technical skills. There was a technical element to it, but it was about those soft skills because it was aimed at this. I want to develop well-rounded analysts or data scientists or planners or whatever it might be, who are comfortable and confident in creating value for the business and comfortable in developing relationship with partners that will be valued. And so through empowering people, it gives them a sense of worth, which again is something that I think helps with retention.
Keeping people, I mean, one thing that's all fascinating. One thing that you didn't mention there is it's this thing about how important is money. I think people are interested in working on interesting things. They want to be part of something where solving problems, working on interesting challenges, potentially even working on new innovative technology to either solve a new problem or even an old problem in a different way. Has that played a part in the thinking, making sure that there's there's only so far you can do because the business is the business and it has the opportunities and challenges it has, but has that played a part in ensuring you keep people engaged and interested, making sure they're working on fun stuff, right? And interesting
Yeah.
things and impactful things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all part of the challenge, and keeping the job live for people. And I think that's a big advantage working in a big business. And again, I'll mention it again, one that's constantly growing and looking to innovate, is that there's always something coming along that's new and different to work on. And then you've got that breadth as well. I've been working on, let's say, Advantage Card. I now want to go and work on Boots.com and work on customer experience. And I think it's a good thing for analysts to get as broad possible experience as they can at an early stage in their career. A, because it helps them decide what they like, and B, because it puts them in the frame for more possible opportunities if that's the way they want to go, as they develop. So I was lucky in that sense, in that there was always a lot going on. But some of that also is there's things going on in other analytical teams, or things going on in the wider business that they want to be part of. And that's, you've got to put your bigger hat on during those periods and say, well, that's great for that person, and it's great for the business as well. From talking to people in the wider industry, they'll have similar challenges within their businesses. Agencies, by their nature, tend to get that breadth. So it's really important that you're giving people interesting and different things to do. If you make it all about money, that's going to run out of road pretty quickly, I find.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, looking forward to, you've got a new role coming up. We're about to start a new year as we're recording this, 2021. Do you think there's, just given the circumstances we're in, and we touched on this earlier in terms of like the changes to the work environment and remote working a bit more, and a broader group of people potentially, given the geography sort of barriers have gone a bit, being online a bit more, all those things. Do you think there's some, the environment that we're now in changes what would ordinarily have been your plans, or do you just think this gives more opportunity and makes it even better to do the kind of things that you've talked about?
I think, well, I hope it gives more opportunity. So this has been an interesting period for me, in that I've been, I left Boots and looking for my next opportunity, which has come up at Pets, but also seeing the way things have been changing. And actually, in the 2 or 3 months I've been looking, I've noticed a change in the way people are talking about roles. Right. There are many more people going out overtly talking about flexible working. So It's really interesting. And I think what we'll see coming out of this, not just within data, but everywhere, is that people will come out of this with different expectations. So for some people, for example, they'll have found, well, I'm not commuting anymore, and actually, I've been working a bit more, but I've been able to balance that with family commitments, for example, and I don't want that to go away. So people will be thinking differently about their life coming out of that. I think, with particular reference to data and analytics, more organizations have realized, particularly with the shift to online, that they need to be making more of their data and more of their analytics, empowering data teams, improving the way the rest of the business works with them to get value out of their data, because data in itself isn't a value. It's how you actually use it that creates the value. And I certainly hope that there'll be more businesses who understand their data and want to back that knowledge and use that. And some will. Sorry, go on.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Well, yes, it's certainly. I've got my fingers crossed that there'll be plenty of that going about. And there can be a bit of a stereotypical perception of people who work in data, in that they're happy sitting in a dark room with their algorithms and coding and all of this kind of thing. And some people are like that, and that's the way they function best. But to me, and in my experience, it's a blend of those sorts of skills, but also working with people, because you've got to work with other business partners. to make a difference, and you've got to have that interaction. So although I welcome the flexibility, and I think people will really appreciate that, there's also the thing I was talking about earlier about team spirit and developing relationships with other teams who you're working with, which I think is really important. So what we've got to do is find that blend between the opportunities and the positives of being more flexible, and what was great about being in a big office with loads of people and energy and all of this kind of thing. How do you bring those two things together? And I think it'd be really interesting to see how that develops. And the other thing I'd just briefly say on this, with reference to your recruitment and retaining people, or maybe losing people, is that obviously the recruitment market is changing. I was talking a few weeks ago to on a round table, and someone who was London based was saying, well, now our recruitment pool is anyone within a reasonable time frame of London, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily have done before. But some organizations are thinking about that. But they also need to be careful about losing that spirit of working together. I'm an introvert, but I actually do like being around other people. And also working from home doesn't suit everybody. If you've got a big house and a nice view, great. If you're in a shared occupancy house, not so great. So we shouldn't assume that working from home is the right route for everybody, but it does change the market.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Paul, it's been fascinating talking to you. I hope you get to work through all of those exciting opportunities and challenges in your new role. Of course, wish you the best of luck in that role, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it once you get your feet under the table, of course. But yeah, thanks very much for being on the show, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, it was really enjoyable, and I always like talking about data and analytics and the people involved. It's been great. Thank you.
Brilliant. No problem. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you again soon.